I chose to do an art lesson on taking primary colors to create secondary colors. I tied the lesson into their science unit about making predictions. I chose this lesson because the students have not discussed colors since the first quarter of the school year and have not had an opportunity to explore using paint the entire school year. To start the lesson, you will need a set of watercolor paints. It is important to remove any of the colors that are not the primary colors, which are red, yellow, and blue. The colors may be added back to the watercolor paint set after the end of the lesson. In addition, you will need a cup with water so that students can clean their paintbrush after dipping their paint in colors to create mixtures. Lastly, to recreate during the explanation portion of the lesson, you will need two plastic containers containing water and food coloring of two primary colors. During the explanation portion of the lesson, the two colors will become one secondary color. Before starting the lesson, I read the students the story, "I Ain't Gonna Paint No More" by Karen Beaumont. The story is about a little boy that explores using paint. Students enjoyed the story because the pictures were engaging and they enjoyed guessing what rhyming words come next. For this exploration portion of the lesson, I asked students what their favorite color was and told students that we were going to explore using three very special colors: red, yellow, and blue. These colors were called primary colors. The exploration portion continued by asking students to predict what colors they would create when mixing the three primary colors. A prediction anchor chart was used to help students have a visual cue about their predictions. The importance of this portion of the lesson was not for students to create accurate predictions, but more so to help them practice making predictions. For the explanation portion of the lesson, students watched me take red dyed water, which is a primary color, and blue dyed water, which is also a primary color, and create purple dyed water, which is a secondary color. If recreating my lesson, I would definitely keep this portion in my lesson. As I watched students, they seemed very engaged at watching me mix the two colors together to create a secondary color. I believe this visual example really helped them see what happens when you take two primary colors to create a secondary color. Students then watched OK Go by Sesame Street, a video that focuses on mixing the three primary colors. During the video, there were pause points. We talked about how red and blue mixed together created purple, red and yellow mixed together created orange, and yellow and blue mixed together created green. As a class, we reviewed our prediction chart and made corrections. This was an opportunity for me to check for understanding, to see if students remembered what primary colors mixed together created new secondary colors. This was also an opportunity for me to show students that sometimes when making predictions, they are not always correct. The prediction chart became a visual aid for students as we moved to the elaboration portion of the lesson. Students were able to look at the accurate prediction chart as a reference as to what two primary colors created the new secondary color. As we moved through the elaboration portion of the lesson, I allowed students to create their own special picture using primary and secondary colors. I wanted the students to be creative and to have fun. As students were painting, I walked around to check for understanding, and at the end of the lesson, we had a whole group discussion for which I used a formal assessment to evaluate my students' learning. In short, I would say I was happy with the results of this lesson. My students had a fun time exploring the paint and were able to make predictions. In addition, my students were able to recall which two primary colors created a secondary color, but had a challenging time recreating the colors using watercolor paint. If reteaching this lesson, I think instead of using watercolor paint, I would use cups of water with food dye and have students mix primary colors together to create secondary colors in a cup.